Hi, hello, and welcome everybody to today's video. If you're new here, hi, I'm Eris. I make all sorts of digital art content on this channel, so if that's your thing, consider subscribing and becoming a part of the Tentacult. Today's video is a bit different from my usual long form content. It's kinda sorta a tutorial type of video. I say kinda sorta because it's not exactly a perfect step-by-step process that I will be talking about, but I think it still could be helpful for a lot of artists. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how I make illustrations like the ones you see pop up on the screen right now. Let's start from the beginning then, shall we? A very important step 0 is inspiration collecting. Even if I have a rough idea for a drawing, I still like to go on Pinterest to look for art with similar vibes or colors with what I'm going for. And sometimes that color scheme ends up completely different from my inspiration, but that's okay too. Not everything has to turn out exactly how you saw it in your head, after all. After this, my actual first step is making a thumbnail version of my illustration, preferably several, but I usually end up just editing my one sketch until I like it. Do as I say, not as I do, guys. It'll be way less painful that way. For anyone who doesn't know, a thumbnail sketch is just a very small, low-effort version of your illustration in this case. It's important to have the idea come across clearly, and making these tiny versions help you focus on the bigger picture. I actually did an exercise that helped me make better thumbnail sketches. Basically, I just did a random idea that popped into my head or saw something similar on Pinterest, and every day I made one thumbnail sketch with a 10-minute timer, so I was forced to focus on the important things. I think you can only benefit from trying this, so if you feel like it, definitely go ahead. It's very fun. When making these plans, I also figured out the composition, of course. There's lots of types of compositions, but what I like to really heavily lay into is where the eyes are led on a drawing, which is what composition is, to be honest, but you get the idea. I want to lead your focus intentionally. Not only that, but also the contrast is very important, not only for readability, but also, again, to lead the viewer's eyes. I learned that when it comes to contrast, saturation is much more important than hue, which makes the most sense. If you get rid of all saturation in your drawing, you should still be able to tell what's going on. A handy trick I learned to see if my drawings are properly readable is if you zoom way out, are you still able to see what each thing is supposed to be? If you are, that's amazing, your piece is readable. For flow, I like to employ everything I can, from hair to clothes to anything that might fit the illustration. The thing I used in this piece, for example, is I used clothes to help frame the face, which is the focus. For this one, I used the position of the body to help guide the eyes. There's also a rule about thirds on a canvas, or central composition, or golden ratio even. I could talk about it, but honestly, that stuff doesn't need much explanation, and I won't bore you with it. I'm sure you guys have heard that a million times already. I obviously don't always use every single trick up my sleeve for every drawing, because that would be kind of annoying. I'm not that big of a tryhard. I do make illustrations simply to draw one of my characters or a color scheme I thought might look cool, so you don't need to take it seriously 100% of the time either, is my advice. The main point is to have fun with it. And I get it, sometimes having a perfect composition piece is what makes it fun, so go for it if that's what you're feeling like making. Now that that's explained, as you can see, I have a rough color on my thumbnail sketches that normally ends up changing quite a bit by the end, but I think it's very, very important to have an idea for the color so you can tear your hair out messing with them when it's in a much more pliable state than when you're finished with the drawing and wondering how to fix it now. Alrighty, finally we can move on to our next step. I swear the rest does not need this much explanation. I do most of my brain work during the planning phases, so to save myself the trouble later. Me, personally, since my style does not use line art, but instead is more similar to a digital painting, I just resize my thumbnail sketches usually and go ham. From here I could go two ways. One is sort of my previous style that I don't really do anymore unless I'm unfamiliar with a complicated design. This version is I go over the thumbnail sketch and sketch a more refined version. This drawing is a perfect example. Once that is done, I pick the colors from the original sketch and start rendering it like how you guys might have seen me during my art streams, for example. There's really not much to explain here. I blocked out the colors and I'm just refining where they go. Now for my current shading and rendering style, I actually use the thumbnail sketches straight up. If there are any background or foreground elements, I'll cut them out into different layers, but I'll still use them as the base. This is my style without much line art. This is the one I prefer these days. I felt my style previously had way too thick lines, and it was because I was using my sketch as the line art, and I kept wanting to make it stand out even though it did not need to be. And I find that if I have a sketch underneath, I'll end up doing this subconsciously. And it was a bit too thick for my liking, so I got rid of them entirely. I only add a fake line art in after the shapes have been refined, so it looks like I got thin line art in some places even though it was added in later. This is the difference it makes for me. Also, with this style, recently I like to give my shading a bit of a watercolor edge look. I think it looks nice. For shading blockouts specifically, I also have two different ways I like to do it. I either go with the colors I imagined in my head for the drawing and try to match the vibe as best as I can. This requires more color theory knowledge than the other option I use sometimes. And this also takes more time because of all the refining that inevitably needs to be done. The second option is I go draw the base colors of a character, then duplicate that layer twice. One for shading color and one for the new base color. This way, I have more freedom to mess around with different ideas if I didn't have a clear idea in my head already, and it's faster. However, I do think the colors can come out less vibrant, more like wishy-washy, if you will, less varied than I personally like. So I either only use it when I'm drawing something that isn't very colorful to begin with, or when I'm ready to define it more anyway, and I just really didn't know what colors to go for. Now for our last step or steps is the finishing touches. I like to add in some texture with these dot and line and whatnot brushes that I got from the asset store. I will link every asset store piece in the description that I mention from now on. Now on to color correction. I have two auto actions I got from the asset store that I really like to use. One makes colors more vivid and the other one does a nice tone curve for the whole drawing. This is great stuff for comics, by the way. I always recommend looking around the Auto Actions tab on the Asset Store for Clip Studio if you're a comic artist. It will end up saving you a ton of time in the long run, trust me. I use these, then I adjust the colors further with color balance and my own tone curves too, if I feel like it is needed. Not always, but I do end up doing it often. My other favorite way to color correct is by using gradient maps. I experiment with the layer modes for these from time to time to see what's best. My two favorites are Pin Light and Overlay. I also recommend looking around the asset store for these or making your own as well. Once I have corrected the hell out of my colors, I sign my piece with my username and date of finishing, and we're officially done. And that's it from me today. I hope you guys were able to learn something new. If you guys enjoyed seeing this type of video, let me know what I should talk about in detail next time. This could also be a specific part of my art that you guys would like to know more about, or even how I design characters for specific purposes. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would be interested in that. If you want to see art from me that doesn't make it into videos, you can check out my Instagram and Twitter at eris_vt. And if you'd like to read my webcomics, you can also find me on Webtoon by searching eris.png. But all the links will be in the description down below. My new webtoon, Ace of Thieves, is currently running, and I would love it if you guys could check it out. It is available on Webtoon. If you guys like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time, but until then, bye bye!